and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And we've got another exciting week in this Black History Month, and once again, to talk about this topic with me is my good pal, Ryan. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing completely okay. Looking forward for another adventure into the Doctor Who universe with you.
Yep. Likewise. Likewise. Now, of course, as per usual, we have the birthday section. And I gotta be honest, I'm honestly shocked by how many times this keeps happening. But one of the characters we're going to talk about, the actor slash actress, actually had a birthday this week. So this happens more often than you think. It's interesting. But yeah, so for this week, we are going from the 13th of February all the way to the 19th. And starting us off on the 19th, we have Mr. Tipping. Ever heard of this guy?
No, but he looks familiar. I may have seen him in something. I mean, maybe in the background somewhere, or maybe as a minor character. Uh,
Probably he's a stuntman. He's a stunt coordinator. Of course, he worked on Remembrance of the Daleks and The Curse of Fenric, two Seventh Doctor stories. But a quick looking into his filmography, there's actually some interesting movies he was in. Like, for example, or rather, he did stunts for and played random minor characters like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, Death Wish 3, Return to Oz, Aliens, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and 1989's Batman. So apparently he's got a
okay,
what?
maybe that's why he's familiar. He could have been one of the Joker's goons in Batman.
Could be, yeah. Definitely an interesting filmography for this guy. Now, on the speaking of interesting filmographies in the realm of Doctor Who, also on the 13th we have Mr. Donald Sumpter. He played, interestingly, two characters in the classic series and one character in the modern series, one character on the Sarah Jane Adventures. He played Enrico Caselli on the Wheel of in Space and Commander Ridgway and the Sea Devils on the Sarah Jane Adventures. He played one of the characters with the coolest names ever, Erasmus Darkning, in the episode The Eternity Trap. But in Doctor Who, he played Lord President Rassilon in the episode Hell Bent. So, respect right there. Now, on the 14th, we have Mr. Michael Edwin Bryant, who was a assistant floor manager on the Crusade, uncredited for some reason, production assistant on the Daleks Master Plan, Power of the Daleks, and Fury from the Deep, and a director on Colony in Space, The Sea Devils, The Green Death, Death to the Daleks, Revenge of the Cybermen, and The Robots of Death. So, some really cool classic series era episodes. And speaking of classic cool classic era episodes, on the 14th we have Mr. Mark Eden. As this image pretty much tells, he played Marco Polo in the first Doctor episode, Marco Polo serial, I should say, serial Marco Polo. Basically, he's the first historical figure in Doctor Who, and that in my opinion, that is definitely a respectable place to be in. Of course, he also played Donald Beverstock on An Adventure in Space and Time, the sort of 50th anniversary documentary on the show. I believe Donald Beverstock was the head of BBC at the time. If I remember my BBC staff people correctly. On the 14th, again, we have the wonderful Mr. Simon Pegg. think we all know who Simon Pegg is, of course. He played
Yes.
he played several characters on Big Finish. He narrated a bunch of stories and audiobooks for Doctor Who, but of course, he was in the episode The Long Game as the editor. And speaking of that episode, on the 16th, we have the Doctor himself, Christopher Eccleston, the Ninth Doctor, the Doctor that brought Doctor Who back. And you know what? He's still playing the Doctor on Big Finish, still to this day. And speaking of people who still play the same characters they played on the TV show on Big Finish, also on the 16th, we have Miss Patricia Maynard. I apologize if I butchered the name. I'm really, really sorry. She, of course, played Miss Winters in the first Doctor Who, the first Fourth Doctor episode, Robot, and then somehow, for some reason, reprised the role 30-something years later on Big Finish in the episode Mirror Signal Maneuver of the Sarah Jane Big Finish series. One of the very few Big Finish things I cannot recommend, but it's weird that she actually, I don't know, I just found it weird that they actually brought that specific character of all people back. And
I mean, I haven't listened to the episode, so maybe it's like maybe it's meant to be a follow up to Robot, or maybe it's set somewhere a few months down the line of that episode. It's been like I haven't listened to that. I haven't listened to it, so I'm only speculating.
No, it was mostly. I mean, I have, but it was mostly they were mostly banking on. She has a grudge against Sarah Jane after what happened in the episode Robot.
Okay.
Yeah, which is for some reason it's tied to the weird obsession that some writers have with having Sarah Jane go up against Satanists. Snark would have loved that comment, but whatever. So on the 16th, this is, I believe, a name you've definitely heard of, right? Jeremy Bulloch.
Yes, I've heard this. I've heard of this character. Yes.
Yep.
That character. I mean, I've heard of him, of course.
Yeah, the original Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly enough, before he was Boba Fett, he was a random character in the Space Museum and a random character in the Time Warrior. He played an archer guy there that helped save Sarah Jane. But I mean, it's Boba Fett, so of course he's got to be on the list. And the final character, the final actress on our list on the 19th, we have Miss Caroline Chikezi. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. She played the character of Lisa Hallett on Torchwood season 1, and I am not gonna expand on that too much because we're gonna talk about the character anyway. So why not save it for once we get to her? So for the wonderful, lovely list of people we had today, thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you. You were trying to say something, and I interrupted you.
No. I was gonna be like, yeah, maybe we should. I wasn't gonna be like, should we talk more about her?
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about her anyway. So after speaking about the modern series' companions of color, we're now moving into we moved on to all characters of color in classic Doctor Who because the BBC, there weren't any companions of color in the classic series unless, of course, you count Chung-Li in the TV movie, which is a gray area in and of itself. But now I just decided to move on to notable companions of color and notable characters of color across all Doctor Who media, including comic books, novels, Big Finish, and of course spin-offs. And first of all, are there any other Doctor Who media that you're familiar with? Big Finish, comics, any of that?
Other than spin-off shows, comics, and Big Finish, that's only a medium of Doctor Who I'm aware of outside of the regular show.
Okay.
Other than the movie with Paul McGann, I don't know if there's been any other movies of Doctor Who that were made.
There were the Peter Cushing movies. If you
Uh,
heard of them.
okay.
And then there were, I don't want to classify them as fan films, but they're Doctor Who adjacent films. If you know where you're looking, if you're really desperate for Doctor Who media. But the
Hmm.
first character we're going to start with is not from a movie, and it's actually the character that well, it's she's featured in the background, but your square is actually keeping her face hidden. So why don't I just go ahead and talk about the first ever companion of color in Doctor who beat Martha Jones to the party by about 27 years, if I remember correctly. Uh, Sharon Davis from the Doctor Who magazine story, which of course she debuted in the story, The Star Beast, which of course also introduced Beep the Meep and the Roth Warriors,
Mhm.
who were featured in the adaptation of that story, The Star Beast, featuring David Tennant as the Doctor. Now, of course, she was the Yasmin Finney character, or to put it more accurately, the Yasmin Finney character in the Star Beast was her. Like she essentially took over that role. She was the one that found uh, Beep the Meep in an alleyway or behind a dumpster or whatever with Fudge, and she was the one that hence introducing the Doctor. Of course, there's some cool creative liberties that Russell T Davies took with that story, but overall, the introduction of her, and oh yeah, of course, K9 was there also. But yeah, the introduction of her into the story was very much different. I mean, I think when we talked about this, about the whole, they introduced Yasmin Finney as the new companion, and they
Mhm.
kind of was in the one episode and a cameo at the end of the third special. Uh, but no, this character actually stuck around for a very long time with the Doctor. She was basically she was a companion, and I believe this was, of course, the first introduction of a companion character in the Doctor Who magazine line. There's some, because of course it only just debuted the previous year, but there's always been this weird gray area with Doctor Who rights to certain characters. Like it puts the rights issues of certain characters from Marvel to shame. Seriously, because like I think last I remember, the BBC owns the Doctor, the rights to the Doctor, the
Yeah.
TARDIS, and that's about it. Any other character, you have to negotiate. No, wait. I think I got it backwards. Uh, but basically, every single character, every single monster, every single planet at times is owned by the writer of whichever serial they debuted in. So, for example, the Ice Warriors are specifically owned by Brian Hales, and nowadays the his estate.
Mhm.
Um, uh, can't remember what. Yeah, so Robert Holmes, of course, holds the rights to many of the other characters. Malcolm Hulk also holds the rights to some other characters. Of course, the most famous one is Terry Nation, who owns the rights to the Daleks and everything associated with them. That's why they could have made the uh, Peter Cushing Dalek movies without it being associated with the BBC. There's all kinds of weird gray areas, but of course, where it really comes into play is the companions, because you cannot use, if you're making a comic, a novel, at least that's been the case for many years. You can't use the TV companions. You have to make your own companions. Hence, that's where this character comes in. They did a couple of episodes of issue with the Fourth Doctor traveling on his own with K9, because apparently K9 was a little less problematic of a character to work around the rights issues. Of course, they mentioned Romana by name, but they could never show her in the comic book. So they had to get creative and created this character. And what a a stroke of being ahead of the curve, they actually introduced the first ever companion of color in Doctor Who before they did it on the TV show. So before we move on to talking more about this character, anything you want to add on what I just said?
Well, I was going to ask you exactly when where did her character fit in the Fourth Doctor's time story, but you pretty much explained that they with But now I have to clarify, like which Romana exactly, like the first Romana or the second iteration of Romana.
Second.
Okay, because I didn't know K9 was around during at least the first iteration of Romana during the story. I mean, at least during the Keys of Time. Well, not in the Keys of Time though, but he does appear during Romana's tenure before the second iteration came in. But it's very interesting. The fact that one of the first debut characters, at least outside of the normal show, at least within print, happens to be her character, and I kind of like that. That's definitely breaking ground there.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me curious if that character if she ever popped up in Big Finish.
I'm getting to that, but of course she's not the first companion in exclusively on print that was introduced because of the same rights issues that I just explained. Every time Doctor Who came out on print, they had to get creative and invent new companions for the first, second, and third Doctor. But
Okay.
when it comes to Doctor Who in print specifically, the Doctor Who brand showed up on uh, these larger magazines like TV comics that included several characters in them. They had like special Doctor Who releases, but Doctor Who magazine, which is still running today, it's on their 700 something issue, I believe, or 800. I lost track, but since 1979, there's always been the signature flagship magazine for Doctor Who, and that's where a lot of the comic book companions were introduced. Now, this being the first that actually stuck around for a very long time, there's a story where she aged about 4 years. So yeah, she not only traveled with the Doctor, she actually grew old with some of the fans reading the comic.
Huh.
And I believe she still pops up every once in a while, generally speaking, in Doctor Who magazine from time to time. And as you pretty much alluded to, yes, she actually did appear in Big Finish when Big Finish adapted their version of the Star Beast story. Believe it or not, the Star Beast debuted in the comics, adapted twice to two different mediums. Of course, the TV show and Big Finish several years prior to that, with, of course, Tom Baker reprising the role of the Doctor, and the character of Sharon Davis was voiced by actress Rhiannon Starbuck. Sorry, it took me so long to get to that name, but unfortunately, and of course, because they didn't really know if they were going to make a sequel, they pretty much covered the whole aging thing in the Star Beast story itself, despite the fact that in the comics it took several stories later to age her up. But yeah, so the way they left it off, it feels like they could do another one and she could come back, but so far they haven't, which is a bit disappointing. But I really did enjoy that they adapted the first two big major story arcs from the comics. The Star Beast, and of course the Iron Legion, which I believe was the first major story arc in the Doctor Who magazine line. But yeah, I really enjoyed their take on it. So, anything else, Ryan?
No, I mean pretty much. I'm honestly, man. I've told you before, especially during the classic. Outside of maybe a few serial episodes, I'm not that familiar with any characters or any stories of Doctor Who outside of the outside of what I watch on television. I've made a few attempts to at least listen to to pursue some Big Finish episodes, but I kind of want to do the whole thing in chronological order, not like just listen to a random episode at a time, because I was afraid that I might come across an episode where I would need to listen to the last one to get context.
Yeah, the thing about Big Finish is, if you want to watch, listen chronologically, you got to go by ranges most of the time. For the most part, one does not cross it. One range does not cross over into the other one. But again, it depends on which range you're following. So, but this one's a one-off, so you can easily just go in, no problem. And speaking of Big Finish, the next character is a Big Finish kind of exclusive character, or rather debuted in Big Finish. However, it is a bit of a gray area character for reasons I'll talk about in just a minute. But the character I'm referring to is actually one that I actually really enjoyed listening to, Erimem, or to use your full name, Erimem Ushim Teperem. Now, before we move on, have you heard of this character at least?
No.
Okay.
The first time.
So she's an Egyptian pharaoh from the time of the pharaohs, kind of a timey-wimey anomaly. She's never obviously remembered as a pharaoh. She's not in any history books, mainly because before she was officially crowned as a pharaoh, she decided to join the Doctor and travel with him in the TARDIS. She was a companion of the Fifth Doctor and Perry. This is a Doctor Who magazine rendition of her. I could have sort of trying to assume what she would look like. The character, because of course she's an audio exclusive character, so you don't really know what she's supposed to look like. But the reason I said she's a gray area character is because she's voiced by Caroline Morris, which I do not believe is a woman of color. I did a couple of episodes ago. I did a research on all the companion actors, and strangely enough, she didn't really do much besides Big Finish at all. So I don't think there's.
Yeah, I'm looking at a photo of her. Yeah, it doesn't look like she is an actress of color, so I definitely get the gray area.
But and even when you're talking about pharaohs specifically, like depending on the time period of the Egyptian Empire, the Egyptian Kingdom, some of them weren't even people of color because of all the mixing of between North Africa and Europe back in the days. For example, I'm pretty sure probably the most not probably easily the most famous female Egyptian pharaoh, Cleopatra, was actually Greek in origin. So, but are you interested by the concept of a pharaoh character traveling with the Doctor?
No. Well, I think the only close of a pharaoh with the Doctor I got familiar with was, at least in the context of pharaoh, was the episode. What was the Tom Baker episode with Sarah Jane where they're in Egypt? They travel to Egypt and
the Pyramids of Mars.
Yeah, I think so. That's the one with the name of the villain who.
Sutekh.
Yes,
I think I might have a clip of Sutekh lying around my laptop somewhere.
Yes.
Give me a second. There it is. I'm uploading it now. It's going to take a few seconds. But what do you remember from that episode?
No, I was going to say some things I remember from that episode. What Pyramids of Mars was one of the few Doctor Who villains who were able to really not only get the best of the Doctor, but to really like mentally dominate him. Yeah, I remember that mental back and forth struggle between them. Like Doctor is beaten, and then he's brought in front of Sarah Jane, completely mentally dominated by him.
Which is a scary thought in and of itself. It shows you how powerful the Sirens were. Yes. And why they need to go. But here's the clip.
I am Sutekh the Destroyer. Where I tread, I leave nothing but dust and darkness. I find that good.
Just listen, that's just that voice. By the way, fun fact, voiced by Gabriel Wolf, who also voiced the Beast in the the episode with the Ood.
Oh yes, like the Impossible Planet. Yes.
And the Satan Pit.
Yes.
Weird that the weird contrast between those two voices, and they're done by the same guy. Still alive, by the way. Still voicing.
It just shows range.
But yeah, I thought you were gonna say the other Pharaoh character from the Matt Smith episode, "Dinosaurs on a Spaceship," where he traveled with Queen Nefertiti.
Yes, that I was gonna bring her. I was gonna bring her up as well. Like those are my only few examples of when Doctor Who goes towards Egyptian mythology. Although outside of when the Pandora opens, River Song played around with the pertaining to be Queen Cleopatra. But outside of like characters tied to Egyptian mythology, those were the only two times in Doctor Who where I remember.
I think they retroactively sort of tied the two characters together to suggest that Aramem is an aunt of Nefertiti or some distant relation in the family. But that is it for the Fifth Doctor. Now we're moving on to the Seventh Doctor, which actually we have two characters here. And I'm warning you, now we're moving into territory of characters I'm not as familiar with starting with Roz Forrester. I almost said Rose. Roz, R-O-Z. She was introduced in the New Adventures novel series alongside another character, Chris Wedge, which is this guy right here, the blonde dude.
Okay. Definitely ties to the Seventh Doctor.
Yeah, clearly from their uniform, they're part of some militant force or whatever. I apologize. She was introduced in can't remember the name of the novel. Let me just check really quick. The original Sin. Sorry, hiccups. She was introduced in the novel Original Sin in the New Adventures line, which is book number 39. I am currently in book number 7, so I got some time to catch up with this character. But it's definitely a character that I've been seeing a lot pop up whenever I do researches on Doctor Who lore, and especially Time Lord lore. And she even actually made the transition into Big Finish alongside the other guy, Chris. I believe played by she's played by Yasmin Bannerman. For those of you who don't know, Yasmin Bannerman plays a lot of characters on Big Finish, but she played on the TV show. She played the tree in the second Christopher episode.
The End of the World. Yeah, she played Jade. That was the name of her. Yes, Jade, Princess or the Empress.
No, yes. She wasn't an empress.
No, she was a representative, but wasn't she a royalty for her species?
I don't remember it being mentioned that she's royalty. The Doctor mentions she's very rich, but I don't think royalty was a word.
I thought it was during their introduction when she presented the Doctor with a gift.
She cutting of her grandfather. Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, so Yasmin Bannerman played this character on Big Finish. They did a stint. Actually, they still occasionally do that, where they just cherry pick random novels from the New Adventures area and other Doctor Who novels and just straight up adapt them to Big Finish. But it's not as successful because many of those novels need to be part of a series for context. So it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle. But apparently the character of her and the other guy worked so well that they just decided to shoehorn them into other stories not related to the novel adaptations, and they show up every once in a while. So apparently she's a very successful character on Big Finish.
Okay.
And the other Seventh Doctor character we're going to talk about today is a Big Finish exclusive so far, Naomi Cross. And this one I really am not familiar at all because she's very recent, as in 2022 recent. She was introduced in an audio called London Orbital. And from the little I've been able to gather from listening to Big Finish podcasts here and there, she's a part of UNIT, and she has some connections with Harry Sullivan.
Okay.
Who, for some reason, is still around in UNIT in some.
And he's still the same age.
Oh well, I mean, the actor died.
No, I know. Just the way he looks compared with the Seventh Doctor, though. I mean,
yeah. So I thought about that too. So I just assumed that it's in the past, like in late 70s, early 80s UNIT, okay. when the actor still could have pulled off that look. Before, of course, he tragically died on his birthday in '86. So, again, apologize. There really isn't much we can say about those two characters because both of us are not familiar with them. And sadly, it doesn't get much better when transitioning into the Eighth Doctor with our first character, Anji Kapoor, another novel exclusive character. She was introduced in the Eighth Doctor novels series and apparently traveled with the Eighth Doctor for a significant amount of time. It's just, again, I'm still in the 7th book of the New Adventures series. There's 61 novels, not to mention another 40 of the 40 or 50 of the 8th Doctor novels, and then an additional 30 or 40 something for the past Doctor adventures before you even get to the modern series. So I got a lot of reading to catch up. I'm usually very good on the Big Finish side and on the comic side, but novels is usually my weak point.
Okay.
Yeah, but sticking on to the Big Finish train, another character I haven't gotten around to, but I might have some things interesting to say about the actress. The character Bliss, as far as I can tell, no last name, just Bliss. She was, I believe, introduced in the Time War series, which I haven't gotten around to because the 8th Doctor timeline is very weird. So I am taking my time with certain box sets for the 8th Doctor until I can get to the Time War series. But yeah, she has some very specific ties to the Time War itself. But this is where I wanted to. This is the part I wanted to highlight. She's played by Raki Takar, who plays one of the teachers on Sex Education, which of course is the show that introduced Ncuti Gatwa. Well, not introduced him, but just
brought him to a more wider audience.
Yeah, this is the show that put Ncuti Gatwa on the map, along with several other actors who were noticeable in other projects, but this is really the show where many of them blew up. So, have you seen Sex Education, by the way?
I only watched a few episodes. I do plan on getting back on that show. This was way before Ncuti was even introduced. It was announced as the new Doctor. I just, normally when it comes to new shows that's got like a hot bandwagon, I kind of wait a bit to see how long it'll continue running because unfortunately with streaming shows, if it doesn't get a second season or even a third season, it doesn't feel like it's worth investing in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get if something's only written once and only meant to be one season. That's fantastic. It looks like they had a solid story, but normally I can't get into TV shows nowadays because they get abruptly cut for no reason.
Yeah, I do plenty of that too. Like it's like every week or so, I call my mom to check up on her, and she's like, "Oh, I watched this new series on Netflix, but it's only got one season, so I'm sad. Like I really liked it, but it ended after one season. So what am I gonna do now? So I can definitely get the frustration there. For the record, I only decided to watch Sex Education because of Ncuti Gatwa. Not the biggest fan of the series itself, but Judy's amazing in it.
Yeah.
And
There's some performances in that show that's fantastic. I have some friends on in a few social Discord groups where they love Gillian Anderson and the fact that she's in that show. They went to watch for her, but one of the actresses on that show that I constantly kept seeing pop up in various TikToks and memes. Amy Lou Wood. Yeah, I've heard that she's also a scene stealer in that show. So I was gonna and some of the memes I've seen of her have gotten my interest in wanting to finish this, at least get back into the show.
let me just make sure I'm. Oh yeah, definitely her. Yeah, she's a standout character. I mean, I don't know if I should spoil, but there's some fun stuff happening with that character on the show.
Like I said, some of the TikToks and memes I came across are kind of spoilers from future
Yeah,
seasons.
that's why I was being very careful there.
But it's been a while since I've come across anything from Sex Education, so it may have just flushed down my brain. But it won't be like a bit of a shock for me if we talk about this afterwards.
Okay, well, she and her boyfriend have a goat, and
Okay, I do remember that.
and they just go around with the goat everywhere they go, including the school.
I do know one thing about her character that was spoiled for me through the constant memes out there is that she's very into baking and she's sex positive.
Mm-hmm. Very much. So that is it for the classic / wilderness years of Doctor Who. Now we're moving on to the modern series of Doctor Who, and the first character we're going to talk about. Now, for the record, for those of you who didn't watching who didn't notice by now already, because we are talking multimedia stuff, we're not going from chronologically from when some of these characters were introduced. We're just going doctor by doctor because it's actually easier and a little bit more organized that way. And we're starting, of course, with the Ninth Doctor, with the character Tara Mishra, who is a character, I believe, from the Titan Comics run, which, it's a newer thing. That's why I'm not as familiar with it. I read some of the Doctor Who comics per Doctor before the introduction of the Titan Comics, before they became sort of the official release for Doctor Who comics outside of just the Doctor Who magazine. So I haven't gotten around to the Titan Comics stuff yet. But yeah, she was introduced in 2016 in a comic called Official Secrets. And she's actually the first Muslim companion chronologically. I mean, even if you actually count Yasmin Khan, she actually debuted 2 years before Yasmin Khan did. So she's basically the first companion of Muslim origin. I believe Pakistani. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, doesn't say here, but I remembered something about her being the first character of Pakistani origin. So yeah, and I believe she's also a unit character. So that's interesting.
I mean, judging from the uniform that she's wearing, it was either she's tied into a military unit or she was in association with unit. But either way, it's kind of an interesting connection with her character. I mean, honestly, it would have been very interesting to see where she would have fit if she was paired with Capaldi's Doctor in some of the novelizations. Seeing how earlier on in Capaldi's run he hated soldiers, or he had a genuine dislike for them.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a thing that all the post Time War Doctors share to an extent.
Yeah, but the thing with the Capaldi's Doctor though, this was after he regenerated from Matt Smith, who kind of was like, I think the thing with the post Time War Doctors was that both Tennant and Eccleston at least had their reasons, because the Time War, where it was so heavily it made a huge imprint in their identity. With Matt Smith though, you can see with his Doctor, it was starting to wane a little bit, even though Time War still made an impact, but it didn't dominate his actions. I mean, outside of the 50th anniversary, what we saw of him, and every time he came across Daleks, Matt Smith really wasn't that hot. Matt Smith's doctor really never came off as if he had a genuine dislike for soldiers. At least not on the surface. Maybe it's further down if he was like poked and prodded, but he came to a. But Matt Smith's character was like with an understanding, with his character, to where we're gonna have soldiers. I understand that, but as long as they weren't, but it wasn't like with Tennant or with Capaldi to where they immediately just see soldiers and it's like, oh, like
the trigger.
Well, not just the trigger, but because they came with the genuine assumptions of their characters. I mean, it's too bad with Eccleston, though. If you stuck around, we would have gotten a little more understanding. I mean, maybe in the Big Finish, it expands more on that. But at least at least from what I see on TV, though, just with Tennant and, with Tennant, though, soldiers he was leaning on, it only came to Commanders where he really got, like, really uppity towards.
Yeah.
But look,
remember how he responded to Jenny.
Oh, yeah.
Daughter episode.
Yeah, that one's a big example, of his whole nothing but soldiers, like really thrown in that genuine dislike. I would say prejudice in a way, but I mean not just prejudice. It's mainly because of his experience. He has that's why I say a dislike. He has a bit of understanding though, but at the same time, for him, it shows a bit of a disconnect from the Doctor from when he sees these soldiers. This is why with Capaldi's, at least in his earlier run, you see he has that, and then when he mellows out a little bit, you do see, at least after the Zygons, you do start to understand exactly, at least in understanding why some of his genuine dislike for people who have the soldier mentality of not just shoot first and later, but just don't think, they just follow. Yeah, that's ultimately the Doctor's thing. He hates people who blindly follow. And unfortunately for us, soldiers are thrown into that category because they have no choice but to follow.
Yeah. And we do see him that's starting to work with a unit in the Monks episode.
That's correct, yeah. And it's not just to say that. It's not to say that only with soldiers. I mean, I know. I mean, even Capaldi's Doctor had a genuine dislike for everyone during his earlier run. I mean, for Christ's sakes, he meets Robin Hood. He hates coming across the resistance with the merry men. Yeah. It's in a way, it's like with Capaldi's Doctor, is more of like he hated not being taken seriously or being given a certain respect and command, which is why from in our previous episode when we talked about with Danny Pink, I liked how his character was really chipping away at the Doctor's bullshit about him like hating soldiers. It's more, you don't hate soldiers, you just hate people not respecting you. You hate not being taken seriously. And it's one of the reasons why I think later on, like in the later seasons, I do like he starts to relax a little bit around people underestimating him or because not taking him seriously.
Yeah, he needed some time to mellow into his come into his role.
Yeah, and also, and I mean, even though I said with Matt Smith, it wasn't always there, but then I remember from A Good Man Goes to War how with that one scene he has with the general tells his troops to run away. Like he's literally weaponizing his general prejudice and dislike towards soldiers following orders just so he can belittle a general into giving the soldiers that exact same order.
Yeah. I want people to call you General Runaway.
Oh no, you're right. It is Colonel.
Is it Colonel? I just pulled it out of somewhere.
I was saying General, but I think you're right. It is Colonel because when you're saying Colonel Runaway, it sounds a little because I'm thinking in Matt Smith's voice. Yeah, I think Colonel Runaway. I mean, if it is General, then okay. Then it's just more like I thought he was a Colonel because I thought the only highest ranking person there was Madam. Not oh my god. It's been a while since I've watched Good Man of War. Not one of my favorite episodes, but
not one of your favorite episodes.
Well, I think because of how rushed everything was in that episode, they were building to that whole climax with the Doctor and Rory getting allies. Then everything ends, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the battle wasn't important. It was just getting the baby. Like it was one of those instances with Moffat's writing where he was building up this big confrontation, only to do the anticlimactic moment to undercut everything. And I go, that would work, but if it wasn't all done in one episode, kind of like with at least with the Impossible Astronaut to the Day of the Moon, that undercutting thing kind of worked because the importance became from who killed the Doctor to learning about the silence. So I didn't mind how the Doctor resolved that moment. Are you looking up that if he was a general or colonel?
Yeah, he was a colonel. He was a colonel.
Okay, yeah, you were right. I was.
Either way, I actually really liked that episode because of how abrupt it was. Because part of the whole reason was that they won without a big major battle. So that's why they needed all the going around gathering allies, is so that they can essentially take the station without a single drop of blood.
Yeah, unfortunately, the whole thing turned out that the victory was for nothing.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the things. The fact that this episode came after the Almost People, the whole thing with the gangers, that was kind of like a whole moment. I mean, especially when you rewatch that, look at them back to back, from the Rebel Flesh to the Almost People, and then to A Good Man Goes to War. That felt to me like a very shaky thread, honestly.
Yeah. Another one of my nitpicks of that episode is so they brought back Captain Avery and Danny Boy, and it just felt like the Danny Boy scene with the planes. Yes. It felt like they just cut that same scene from Victory of the Daleks, and with Captain Avery and the kid, it's like they filmed it on the same set of Curse of the Black Spot, and inserted it into that episode without even bothering bringing the actor there, because he was only in that blink and you'll miss it scene.
Now, when you bring that up, that even makes me even more frustrated. I mean, not more frustrated, but it brings a frustrating point. The point of Danny Boy being there. It wasn't Danny a World War II pilot during the Victory of the Daleks? How did the Doctor? Why would the Doctor bring this guy in? I mean, it made more sense with the pirates though, because they had a flying ship. They were more like, well, I mean, sure, they may not be sharpshooters like Danny Boy was, but given the context that they are that it's a space station, it made more sense for him to get space pirates to at least cause a distraction, so then the captain can do that whole thing where he shows up and points the gun at oh my god, what the
Madame Kavarian.
Madame Kavarian, and then do the whole ship as R thing, because at least that would have been like a good 1-2 punch though. The pirates provide the distraction, but the captain goes in for the the true moment, like to prevent and then of course even then with the I don't know, the more I keep going across, my brain's just gonna keep trying to untangle that knot.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up by saying the reason I think they brought back Danny Boy and the other World War II pilots is because they already set up the fact that their planes can fly in space and shoot things in the space, because they fired at the Dalek spaceship.
Oh, okay.
And that's, I think, why it was so easy to take that shot and insert it into this episode.
Okay.
Fun fact: two other characters were supposed to be in that episode that, unfortunately, they couldn't make the rights to the episode. Ood Sigma and Captain Jack Harkness. Let's move on. So we're still sticking with the Ninth Doctor here, with the actress Camilla B. Butt. I'm really sorry if I pronounced that name, but she played a character called Nova in the Ninth Doctor's first box set on Big Finish. Ravagers, I believe the name of the box set was. She was basically, they kind of made this almost like Satellite 5 again on Big Finish, but
okay.
It was more of a station where people could live in, and then came these Ravagers, not to be confused with the Ravagers from the Jodie Whittaker Flux stuff, but this is
completely
characters that just like to turn history upside down to feed off time energy or whatever. It's a very interesting story, but basically what happened with this character, the character Nova, is she was one of those characters who was just trapped on that space station with dreams of seeing the universe, dreams of traveling, dreams of wandering around. The Doctor shows up. I think you pretty much know the story by now. The Doctor shows up, promises her things beyond her wildest imagination. She joins up with him, and then there's an interesting twist of she dies in one episode, and then because these creatures like to mess with time, they sort of reversed time and brought her back. But before she knew the Doctor, and so there was some interesting wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff there. It's been a while since I've listened to that one, but unfortunately, for some reason she just didn't travel with the Doctor afterwards. Now, part of it is because, of course, Chris Eccleston refusing to have any other companion except Rose. And of course, those stories are taking place before the Ninth Doctor met Rose. Of course, to answer your question about how the Ninth Doctor would have worked with soldiers, they did do a season finale of sorts where where the Doctor meets the Brigadier.
Mm-hmm.
They fight Cybermen together, and he even meets a unit soldier who was, of course, a bigger part of the unit Big Finish series. And he does kind of meet other companions of previous Doctors, but as far as a constant companion traveling with him in the TARDIS, Chris Eccleston made it very clear several times, it's Rose or nothing. So, I mean, Billy Piper still does stuff for Big Finish here and there from time to time, so maybe they can get the two together. I hope. But right now, they seem to be focusing on just the Ninth Doctor on his own with some guests. Okay, now we're moving on to some characters we can actually talk about, and characters I'm pretty sure you've at least seen, because we're jumping into the 10th Doctor realm, and to be more accurate, we're jumping into the Torchwood realm. And of course, the first character we're going to talk about is the episode Cyberwoman. Of course, she was Yanto Jones's girlfriend before the Doomsday episode, before Torchwood 1 went to hell. And of course, she's Lisa Hallett, which we already talked about. She was shown from time to time in flashbacks as her proper self, but for the most part, she was introduced in the episode Cyberwoman as sort of a half-converted Cyberwoman who they sort of stopped in the middle of the process before she could be properly converted, and she caused a lot of problems for the Torchwood crew. I heard a very disturbing sigh. What's the deal?
No, it's just really looking back at the outfit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't get the point of that outfit. Okay, she's supposed to be half converted. Okay, you can maybe show a portion of her human arms, or cover up her lower torso. Show, maybe have some of her arms be exposed. You know, that she's not. Maybe have some of the cybernetic extensions on there. But clearly, the design of that really was just the whole idea of trying to sexualize the whole point of Cybermen, which, I'm sorry, what? That's it's supposed to be sexy to have your whole physical autonomy taken away from you. That's something that's supposed to be oh, here's some good cosplay ideas and something that the women can do. Oh, newsflash, man, I've seen some fans of Doctor Who, men and women, regardless, they will dress up as a full Cyberman, classic or new. So honestly, that whole outfit just screams bad taste, which probably was a good idea of a story, honestly.
It was, to be honest, it was. But like you said, they went for the over-sexualization and objectification over practicality because
even when I was like, when did this come out? Like somewhere in the mid 2000s? No. Tenet was later. Torchwood, that late 2000s, early 2010s.
2006-ish, 2007-ish. Like the end of the first season is Jack basically leaving to join the Doctor and Martha in the season finale of that.
Yes, I do remember. Yeah, so that episode alone, I mean, especially the fact that she goes around, like not terrorizing, but stalking the crew, causing problems. How am I supposed to take this threat seriously when it looks like that? Not actually. No. The threat is serious, but when the threat looks like that, you're undercutting any elements of tension that you are building in that scene.
And it gets even worse because of stuff you don't even see in this picture.
Yeah,
because you know how the Cybermen have these large, heavy boots that make a very loud thud noise whenever they walk. So they still had that sound effect of the thud whenever she walked, but she was wearing high heels. Cybermen high heels. So again,
it's one of these instances where I'm thinking maybe Chris Eccleston kind of had a point of not bringing Russell back.
Yeah, and the reason why he left was because of him and Russell not getting along, not agreeing on the direction of where the show is going.
Yeah,
and looking at this, you can kind of see it. I think
it's one little. I mean, I'm not saying it's one nitpick. I mean, look, there's some decisions Russell made during the course run of Eccleston Tennant's run where I thought was kind of like overshadowing like the whole story. But but then in Torchwood, there were just some moments where I'm going, what's the show trying to be? Like that was the problem in the first couple episodes. The fact that this was in the middle of its run. What was this show trying to be?
Yeah, and I think Chris Chibnall actually wrote this episode. I'm not super sure about that just yet, but this design just looks like a Russell T design more than a Chibnall design.
It's just more than that, but the tragedy of her character, though, she's unfortunately a human who has been taken and is being stripped of humanity, being turned into a emotionless humanoid killing machine. And yes, they stop halfway through, and the whole point is they're trying to get her humanity back, trying to get her back to normal. But how am I supposed? But once again, it's just looking at her throughout the episode. Sure, she's not like that. They didn't cover. It's been a while since I've watched that episode, but just seeing that moment, just seeing that image alone, just really brings back so much things where I'm like, it's really distracting of what that episode really could have been.
Yeah, and it's a really good episode story-wise, and I really loved it when I first saw it. But like you said, looking back on it and seeing this design right here, yeah,
especially when she's meant to be a killing machine, where she's kind of terrorizing the crew, and you're supposed to have moments of crew.
Fights a pterodactyl in this episode, seriously. But no, and she basically kills Jack a couple of times.
Yeah,
but you know what?
I'm pretty sure Jack, if he came back, would have made a couple of quips about that. But even in the fact that you see her on screen like killing Jack dressed like that, I don't know. Maybe if this was like no, actually, even in horror films, when we have something like that, there's a little bit of like terror behind it. This is meant to be like on television for a general audience. It's like it really have to try to establish a tone here, or try to make that make sense.
Yeah, and in the same episode, there's this outfit right here. Earlier in the episode, she kills the guy that actually saved her life by trying to convert him, and you see the horrible body horror that he went through mid-conversion. That's terrifying. And then you compare how his body looks with the Cyberman parts sticking out of it to how her character looks.
Yeah.
Speaking of the controversial moments in Torchwood that we don't like, we now skip ahead to the final season of Torchwood on the TV show, also known as the season we do not talk about around here, the Miracle Day season. What?
Yeah, I knew you were. I had a feeling you were alluding to Miracle Day.
Yeah, Miracle Day with the introduction of Rex Matheson. Now, I will say this: it's a very interesting concept for the character. Like, of course, the whole concept behind Miracle Day is people stop dying. But around the same second where this phenomenon started, the guy was in his car. He accidentally ran into a truck. There was this.
Yeah, he gets impaled. Yeah,
by metal bar went straight through his chest, and he basically carries it around the entire season.
Well, yeah, the wound. Yeah, the wound. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not carrying the spear thing in his chest, but he was walking around with this wound, and this whole time there's this question of, is he dead? Is he not? Like, if they fix things, is he gonna die, or has he been this way long enough that he's healed well enough?
No, and then I never came across that concept. I came across I was like, he died, and like everyone else on Earth that's still alive during this time, they still have the wounds of their death, which is because there were people who were I think there was that scene where they were in a hospital where one nurse was talking about there was a woman who was throttled to death by her husband, but the husband can't be arrested because she's alive, but she still has those marks, like she still has the handprint marks across her neck.
And it's kind of like he's still choking her, even though his hands are not on her throat.
Exactly. And then, of course, I forgot the name of the agent, but the one agent that was pursuing Jack and Gwen, there were multiple times where you see her die and then come back, and she's not fully healed though. But like one when she's thrown out of a building, or her neck is twisted, and then she comes back
walking around with a backwards head.
Yes. So that's my impression what happened with Rex. Like, he still has that open wound, which he has to dress. And of course, that open wound is played later on for how they save the day. But
yeah, because they put Jack's blood in his body, and then they have Jack on one side of the world and Rex on the other side of the world, and they both throw all the blood into the giant lady part that runs through the center of the earth.
Yeah, the gaping maw that's at the center of the earth.
Yeah, and then that's how they save everyone. But then
they bring death back to the planet.
Well, yeah, I was way off. Yeah, that's how they bring back the concept of death back into planet Earth, and of course, unfortunately, their good friend Esther Drummond, I believe her name was. She gets dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. The epilogue is them at the funeral, and then I can't remember how this happened, but Rex kind of dies again. And then
they were trying to discover a mole in the CIA, which they found the mole. They went to confront her. She shoots Rex, and while she's trying to escape, they arrest her. And then Rex is on the ground. He's dying. He's dead. And Jack and Gwen are kind of once again mourning. And then he wakes up as if out of a shock. And then it turns out, yeah, he's
and then the wound from Miracle Day, who he's carrying around the whole season, magically heals itself because of Jack's blood. And they leave it as a cliffhanger of like, so we've got another Jack running around, and oops, season's done. They're like the show.
They wanted to extend it more, but I think because the Miracle it kind of really wasn't received well.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, watching it they were trying to create this huge, massive storyline of the world. Everyone is death is no longer happening. There's this concept, and I understand some of the things that we're trying to do. What is a world where no one dies? What is it like? But then, of course, came the subplot with Jack, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. But then, guess what? It ties into the larger narrative. Problem was that, but then, of course, the thing was that in a world where no one dies, Jack is the only one apparently who can die. So obviously, that was the big theory was it has something to do with Jack. Then it ties back into his past of him being reckless, him in Italy, like getting this lover, And unfortunately, the romance kind of goes sour because the lover didn't understand the concept of him being alive, and Jack, being Jack, was so terrible at explaining it. He's just like, oh no, don't worry, I'm okay, I'm back, it's all right. Dude, this man saw you get shot in the head. Why don't you pull him aside, explain to him what's going on with you before you guys start boning? And he kills you in the middle of it, and then you end up getting kidnapped, used as a I don't know what, a theater spectacle. People wanting to kill you over and over and over again. Pretty much the same thing as kind of
exorcism or whatever.
Huh?
Like a subject of exorcism, I think that was the thing.
No, it wasn't exorcism. No, he comes back and the person next to his lover kills him again, and he's used as this like carnival piece to where come step up. You know, people were like in this underground area where Jack was strung up. Every time he came back, he was murdered over and over and over again. It was like that. It is a dark moment of that show, but once again, it was just more of the thread. How you got there was so fucking stupid. Like, I get it, it's Jack's fault that he's not as smart as he should be, but then of course the secret society is formed because of because of what Jack is. So clearly, the whole miracle day is kind of like the miracle is how the hell Jack is still alive. Yeah. And why the hell is he still around?
Yeah. Well,
like there's some points of that show that I don't like, but moments that still stick with me. With Rex's character, like I don't know the writing around it, but Mekhi Phifer was doing his best of trying to of this character who unfortunately died of his own because of his own fault. And
don't be on your phone while you're driving, people. Lesson for life.
Or at least don't be on your phone driving in the minutes of night. Yes, now we have like little little vents that can hold up our phones, but even then, that's still a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a situation because I've been in a few car accidents because guess what? I was looking at my phone. But the thing is that with Rex's character, I get the journey he was on. He doesn't know if he's in a place to where he's slowly dying or he's slowly coming back alive. Is he undead? So I understood the psychological issues and journey he was going through, especially forming a bond with, I believe, a doctor who he ends up seeing die, and he's being tortured by the man who killed her. So it's kind of like I understand the journey Rex went through. My biggest problem with this whole show was the journey that Jack and Gwen were going on, because for two people who should be experienced with something that's like alien, they are acting like this is the first day on the job for them.
Well, to be fair, this is the first time something on this scale happened.
True. Very true. And I understand that. But they are not coming across very logically about it. Jack's whole thing, like, the first time he's shown, he's destroying evidence and erasing someone's memory. Guess what? The same person they need help from, they can't help them because Jack erased this person's memory. Like, Jack is he was so gung-ho on, like, blowing things up, trying to put a stamp on everything. He never sticks around to ask why or to learn anymore. It's just more of, this shit's happening on Earth. We'll just cover it up. Pretty much kind of like in a Men in Black situation. I'm just going to erase your memory. But guess what? The moment you need someone to help you, turns out it's the one person who could have maybe got an idea of what's going on, but can't help you because you took the memory. Like, it's writing like that. I see that in Miracle Day was more, it's a fun character moment to where you need to start looking at Jack and how he operates. But then at the same time, when you rewatch this, if it's more of Jack, if you had just decided to wait and see what happened instead of just moving on as if nothing happened. But then, of course, that plays into Jack being immortal. He can be very willy-nilly about it. He can be gung-ho about that because he can't die. He can live on forever. But it was one of those moments where it's this one moment in time where, guess what? Your wounds aren't healing. How about you slow down?
Yeah, and he takes a while before he even comes clean about it.
Or at least he remembers the memory he buried about it. But even then, yeah, Jack's lived so long that he doesn't have a perfect memory, obviously, but it's kind of to where who he is as a person, it makes you question, like, maybe he should have been dead at that. Maybe he should never have came back.
It's like, the core of that character never changes. He's always reckless, even before he was immortal.
Well, yeah, that was one thing about his character. He was a man on the run, and his one shining moment of not being reckless was the part that was that episode with the Ninth Doctor. But of course, and I get it. I don't know. It's just like that's one thing with and this whole tangent on Jack is just so go back on what my thing about Rex. However people feel about Rex's character, if he came off very brutish or he came off as ignorant or like uncaring to Gwen and Jack, it's clear they spent the first episode just trying to get you to understand where he's coming from as an agent, pretty much a normal guy, and now him, like everyone else in the world, are thrown into this phenomenon. And him as an agent, he's trying to figure things out, but at the same time coming to grips with his mortality while in a world where people can't die. I actually, to be honest, I was kind of interested to see if Torchwood was coming back to maybe do a follow-up with his character. I would have liked to have seen the idea of someone like Rex, now immortal like Jack, and how he would approach things. Especially since there was that secret society of people that existed out there.
And if they're bringing Torchwood back, they can still follow that up.
Yeah,
well, whatever.
The door was open, but that is if Mordecai Pfeiffer wants to walk through the door.
Yeah, it's all up to him.
And I think we spent enough time on Rex. Let's move on.
Yeah. So thankfully we got a character that didn't really make that much of an impact. So much so that she was pretty much immediately replaced, and we're jumping into the realm of the Sarah Jane adventures. And I gotta be honest with you, I think even fans of the show probably forgot that this character existed. Kelsey Hooper. So she only shows up in the first episode, which granted is the longest episode because it was I think an hour-long episode-ish.
I think the whole thing was to establish Sarah Jane, like her life, where she is right now, and how she comes across with Mr. Smith, the computer, and then with Luke, right?
Yeah, this was how she But by the time this episode starts, Sarah Jane's already established in Bannerman Road. So it's much like with Doctor Who, you're always seeing things from the perspective of the companions. In this episode, you're seeing it from the perspective of the new girl who moved in next door to Sarah Jane and how she's being introduced to Sarah Jane's world. Of course, that's where they introduce Luke, they introduce Mr. Smith. They explain why K9 can't be associated with the show because, again, rights issues, because there was another K9 show around the same time. But somewhere in between, you get this character who's like, she's another neighbor. She wants to be friends with Maria Jackson, who just moved in. And she's very annoying and very whiny and very screamy. I think it's pretty obvious that watching this episode for the first time, the script is not going to work. So, she's, and here's, I think, not really a nitpick, not really a plot hole. It's something weird to notice about this episode is that Luke is basically comprised of like aspects of thousands of people who came to this this sugar drink factory. Whenever you walk in, they take a scan of who you are, and they add your brain patterns to Luke, to the archetype. I can't remember what they told him in the episode. They add your essence to it. Mm-hmm. And she's mentioned several times in the episode that she's been on that tour like 100 times. So they gave Luke the essence of 1,000 people. How many of those were from the same person, which is this girl? Again, like I said, not really a plot hole, not really a nitpick, just something to think about.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Sarah Jane was one of the shows I couldn't access because because when I wanted to watch it, it was only available like in England, or I would need to get like BBC Three, and I'm going like I can't sign up for that. I'm like at the time a kid in community college where I can't pay for a subscription to something.
Even in England, it's very difficult to find that show these days. I think they added it on to some. They made it easier, but
it could be available on something else now.
I think the only proper way to get that show is on physical. But well, not everywhere sells these. But yeah, I think there's no reason to start talking about this character. So that's what we're going to look at.
I'll just double check. Look, it looks like it's available on Max and Prime.
Okay.
I don't know.
You, not so much for me.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's available like worldwide or if it's available in a certain region to where you might need a VPN to access it.
Well, my region is notoriously being shunned by a lot of things, so I'm not even going to bother to look for it. But I want to talk about a character we do enjoy seeing in the Sarah Jane Adventures, Clyde Langer.
Okay.
One of, if not the best characters in that show, not named Sarah Jane. Of course, after the first episode, this girl's out, this kid's in, and what an impact he made. I mean, he was basically Luke and Maria's friend in school, and I think he also was the one that came up with with the idea of how to defeat the Slitheen. And they bring him in. He's the new guy. He makes an impression, and he really is the glue that holds this show together. More so than Luke, I would say, because later, Tommy Knight had to move because of education purposes. So they kind of segued his character out of the show. Not necessarily out of the show, still around, just a lot less. So basically, it was Clyde's job to basically carry on the torch. And I think he did a brilliant job. I mean, he lasted all 5 seasons, still very much associated with that show today. And he still continues to play the character on Big Finish. They just brought back the new sort of continuation of that show. So, yeah, he's Anthony. No,
Daniel Anthony.
It's Anthony Daniels is C-3PO. It's Daniel Anthony, not Anthony Daniels. My bad.
No, don't worry. It's completely okay. No, I was just double checking regarding where to find it. And yeah, I see it's available on Max for a subscription, Amazon Prime for a premium subscription. You can buy it on Apple TV, and then it's available on YouTube for a premium subscription. So.
So lots of places
certain episodes I did see of the Sarah Jane Adventures. Clyde was in it, and yeah, he was kind of like the more I won't say he was the more humane aspect of the show to really get involved in, especially for something that was really meant for kids.
Yeah, and he does actually save the day more often than not when you think about it. Like
Wedding of Sarah Jane, he's actually integral to defeating the trickster.
Yeah. And in the next episode where the Doctor shows up, him and the Doctor basically switch locations.
Yep.
That's the Doctor's access into Earth because of things set up in this episode, the wedding of Sarah Jane. And you mentioned defeating the trickster is very brave. This episode right here, The Curse of Clyde Langer, which basically everyone immediately hates him as soon as they hear his name. And that's even Luke, for some reason, who is he's human but not altogether human. So it's weird how that thing affected him. I also really like his relationship with his mother, and the relationship he has with his father is somewhat similar to what we talked about with Ryan on the show. Ryan Sinclair, not you, Ryan.
Not me, I know.
but I think at least they they put a much better seal on his storyline with his dad. Uh, and I love how his conversation with his dad ended in that episode. But another character from that show, of course, we can't really talk much about Clyde without mentioning Ronnie Chandra, played, of course, by Anjali Mohindra, who, by the way, is married to the Master, Sasha Dewan.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she basically she's if Clyde was like the new kid replacing Kelsey, Ronnie is the new kid replacing Maria, because Maria, for some reason Maria and her dad were only around for like the first season. They made a return in season 2 for one episode, but then they brought in Anjali Mohindra as Ronnie, and she stayed all the way till season 5, and she basically took over the role of Maria Jackson, of the next door neighbor. And now the continuation series on Big Finish is literally titled Ronnie Chandra Takes on the World, or something like that. But it's her and Clyde together, and yeah, I just really love how she. It's really a wonderful thing to see how her and Clyde and even Luke really come into their own as characters on this show. Of course, they meet the Doctor. They meet 2 doctors at one point. And I love that they really expanded on Ronnie's family, because, of course, they introduced, of course, her father, who, surprise, surprise, is the headmaster in the school. Whoops! So that causes some problems for Clyde.
Yeah.
And of course, they introduce her mother, Geeta Chandra, with the floor shop. There's that funny episode where Haresh, Ronnie's father, Haresh and Geeta meet Jadoon, and suddenly they realize aliens exist, and they're talking to the kids like it's like some kind of shocking surprise. It's like, really, you don't say, giant rhino people? Interesting. But yeah, so of course it has been often alluded to that eventually, at some point in the far future, in the near future, Clyde and Ronnie are going to end up together, and they've always been this sort of will they, won't they type couple, even though it's a show for children for the most part, so they don't necessarily go all the way out into that concept, but I mean, there's obvious hints to that in the episodes. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add? I forgot to. I wanted to bring up some of the clips from when they meet the Doctor, but I forgot. So it's a shame.
Well, honestly, with Ronnie, unfortunately, not much I can talk about. I mean, the only episodes I've seen of her was the same episodes I saw of Clyde, which was the Wedding of Riversong and the Death of the Doctor. At least the only ones that were available in the U.S. to watch. So I have no grand scheme of her character. The only reason why I have a little more on Clyde is because he's a little more he was made more integral to the plot. Unfortunately,
more important. Now we're in a sort of transition area between the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor. But yeah, we've got in the 11th Doctor, we have, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this name, Alice Obiafune. I'm really terrible with names. It's a comic character, so I never actually heard the character mentioned out loud. So it could be what I just said. It could be something completely different. But yeah, she's another one of those Titan Comics characters that was introduced in the Titan Comics run, which, of course, as I mentioned, I have still not yet to reach. She was introduced in an issue called Afterlife in 2014 and continued on to all the way up to 2018 with her final story being Without a Paddle. But like I said, sadly, not much I can say. And another character I don't have much to say about is Valerie Lockwood from the Big Finish series. And don't get your hopes up. They didn't actually sign up Matt Smith to do Big Finish stories on audio. They got this guy Jacob Dudman to do an impression of Matt Smith, an incredibly spot on impression. Like if you close your eyes and just listen to him, you would think it was actually Matt Smith doing the 11th Doctor, but it isn't. It's the Jacob Dudman who did a lot of did several of the Doctors on Big Finish. But yeah, so they brought in the companion Valerie Lockwood, played by Safia Ingar. I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name. But yeah, it's this actress right here, an Indian actress, I believe. And this sort of takes place right after Angels Take Manhattan and before the Snowman. Or no, I think it's after the Snowman. It's between the Snowman and Bells of St. John. Because it's very apparent that the Doctor is actively searching for Clara Oswald to find out the mystery of the woman from the episode. And along the way, he meets this character, and they have a couple of Big Finish box sets together. So it's that.
Very interesting.
And now for a character that I actually do know. If it's from the character, so it's from the another spin-off show, Class. We got two characters we're going to talk about here. We've got what?
Oh no, like Class. Okay, I forgot that existed.
So did a lot of people, but not this guy. So yeah, we're talking. First of all, we're talking about Ram Singh. He's a Sikh character, the Sikh, the religion, who is also a football player, real football, not the American thing, obviously. And he's first introduced. He's the sports jock of the in the school. He's the kind of the guy you don't want to mess with. And he's very popular. He's a football star. He's got a very beautiful girlfriend, and she just gets killed off in episode 1.
Shit.
Yeah, and what a horrible way to go. She basically it's sort of like a prom type situation where they're walking in the moonlight, and then she gets stabbed through the chest by this weird shadow creature, and all the blood and guts just spills all over his face. Like it's gruesome. And then they go on and cut off his leg. But of course he then manages to save the day, and the Doctor gives him a replacement leg, sort of a prosthetic leg, but which that means that he can still walk, but unfortunately he can't really play football as well. So yeah, poor guy. Now the other character from that show is Tanya. Whoa, boy. Tanya Adiola. Sorry, my bad. Tanya Adiola who's basically like the little sister of the group. Like she's they bounced her up a couple of classes because she's really smart, and because of that, a lot of the times the other characters in class sort of belittle her or talk down to her, but she doesn't let it get to her too much, and a lot of the times she actually helps Ram with his homework because she's a smart kid and he's the athlete, so it's perfect mix, I suppose. But yeah,
Okay.
but no real romantic relation there. They're more hinting towards Ram having a more romantic relationship with April McLean in the episode in the series. Unfortunately, of course, the show got canceled pretty early. They still continue on the legacy on Big Finish with um, with the same actors, with the slight exception of Tanya, who came back and voiced the character on the first couple of box sets, but then they replaced her with a different actress for reasons I'm not 100% sure of. Yeah, so does any of that, what I just said, make you want to watch Glass or no?
I had no interest watching it the first time it was announced, and honestly, the fact it wasn't continued after one season, I no. I mean, unless someone wants to, unless there's some things of the show that kind of top, that's kind of like, from what I remember of Class was when it was being announced, it was going to be very loosely, it was going to be separate from like Doctor Who in general. Like you'll see, like the only connection would be with the Doctor ever showed up.
Which he did, episode 1.
Yeah, but if it's not completely loose, I mean, and the other connection was that it was the Coal Hill School, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Coal Hill Academy now.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if I honestly don't know if I'm interested to watch it. If it's maybe I'll watch an episode or two just to get an understanding of the show, maybe get a feel of the show. But I don't think it's something I might. I don't know if I'd be tempted to watch the entire season.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, to be fair, it's not a very well liked series. Personally, I loved it. I really liked it. I don't know what people's deal with beef with that show was. I just loved it. Maybe it's because I'm just a weird Doctor Who fan, but I didn't see what other people saw about that show. We've got a couple of characters from the Titan comics again. More characters I'm not familiar with.
And no, I'm not either. I think we may have reached the number of characters I'm familiar with.
Yeah, we've got Hattie Monroe introduced in the Titans comics. For first story introduced, it was The Twist in 2016, all the way up to Beneath the Waves in 2017. Next, after that, we have Jess Collins, who was introduced in the first in the issue The Pestilent Heart 2016, all the way to Doorway to Hell, and in 2017. Also, final story for that. Also, companion who was that was his final story was Maxwell Collins, who was introduced in 2016's Moving In, and that is about it for the three characters from the Titan Comics series. But there's someone else I want to talk about for this for this series, and it's this character right here, and I don't necessarily remember the name. Give me just a quick second, if I could look up the name of the character.
But where is he from exactly?
Well, this picture right here that you're watching is from the Sarah Jane Adventures, but there's a reason why I'm taking my time trying to realize the. There's a reason why I'm looking this up. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, so there we go. What is the guy's name? I think his name the shopkeeper. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this for a second. Okay, so after looking it up, it is the shopkeeper, and the actor's name is Cyril Nuri. Apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. Again, I'm terrible with names. But yeah, so he shows up in season 4 of Sarah Jane Adventures, a mysterious character who sends Sarah Jane and the other people back in time to look for some stuff. Shows back up again in the final series, which unfortunately it felt like they had a story set up for this guy tied into Sky, which was Sarah Jane's second adoptive child. She adopted an actual alien girl, and like I said, because unfortunately Elizabeth Sladen passed away before they could properly finish the season, we never really got to know too much about this character. And then he shows up again in Class as the chairman of the board. Same actor, probably same character, never really alluded to if it is the same guy, but it's interesting. And they also set up a very mysterious storyline with the chairmans of the Cold Hill Academy. From the looks of it, it kind of felt a little bit like the Court of Owls from Batman, like a secret society in Cold Hill running things from behind the scenes. Wait, there's more. And it turns out they're they're part of a cult worshiping the Weeping Angels. And it's like there's this big mural with a prophecy of a giant, massive weeping angel that's apparently the harbinger of doom. From the looks of your face, you did not like any of what I just said.
Oh no! Oh my god! I mean, okay, I guess secret society. Okay, that could work in the doc. I mean, maybe Doctor Who really never touches that much on it because it's always wrapped up like within an episode. But worshiping the weeping angels.
It can work. It can happen, right?
Yeah, I don't think the angels are interested in followers. Honestly, oh my goodness. Ugh. Unless it's the weeping angels in the flux, then that makes a lot more sense. But
I'm not gonna lie. When the weeping angels showed back up in the flux, I thought they were gonna touch on this storyline again, and they never did.
Well, obviously not. I mean, Chibnall's pretty much doing his own thing once he was given the reins.
More or less, yes. But I still felt it was interesting that both these characters, enigmatic, mysterious, have their own interests, both played by the same guy. Both sadly never really got to see their characters' story arcs reach the finish line. But yeah, it's interesting, as this meme points out.
Sorry, I'm just looking over that. I mean, I get it. Either the thread that's there, the fact is the same actor that pops up. I mean, to be honest, I probably would not have thought twice about it even if I watched both spin-off series. But then, like, I would get fans who would have that thread there. I don't blame you guys for having that.
Yeah. Just it's an interesting thread about this character that I wish someone would pick it up and actually gives us a proper storyline with this actor. But that is a story for another time. So I think we talked long enough about characters we mostly know stuff about, and some characters we know nothing about. Where can the good people of the interwebs find you, my friend?
Well, currently, right now, people out there, if you're a fan, I mean, obviously fans of this genre, this fandom, If anyone out there are fans of pro wrestling, I have a podcast called Wrestling Ramblings and Rages. It's available under Shimo Media Network. It's on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Pretty much the whole show is myself, my friend James Shimo, and our occasional reoccurring guest host, Brenton McPherson. We would do sometimes we'll touch on news topic episodes in wrestling, or we'll talk about moments in wrestling that we remember, or certain things in wrestling that really kind of makes us want to rage out a little bit, but more in a healthy, productive way, and not more of just rambling on for no apparent reason, just because we can. Because if that was the point, we would not be releasing our episodes out on these forums, honestly. This would just be us getting together, but you can check out our episodes. We also do list episodes as well, so it's not more just we're just sitting rambling, though. We kind of do like list topics. We also do currently we're testing out this new format where myself, James, we're going to be pitching or doing our own fantasy booking style of an episode of on a certain moment in wrestling history that maybe if we look back on, give our turn on it, to see how it could have been done. Currently our episodes out we have right now, we have a best of 23 and a worst of 2023. With February happening this month, we do have ourselves, Valentine's Day just passed. We did an episode where we list our top 10 famous wrestling pairings or wrestling pairings / couples in kayfabe. We're gonna release one episode later out where we're gonna be talking about actual wrestling couples in real life coming out soon. Hopefully by the end of this month in February. If not, it should be coming out very soon. But as I said before, it's available on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. It's also available on iHeartRadio, Overcast, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. So go ahead and check it out.
Cool. And you can find me every Monday on this show, every Thursday on another show on this channel called Fun with Flags, where me and my friends sort of talk about, teach each other about each other's countries. And you can also find me talking even more Doctor Who on my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek. I do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way up to 2023. And I also did a couple of trailer reactions recently, and I also did a before and after movie review for Madam Web from the theater. So if anyone's interested in what I had to say about that movie, go ahead and check that one out. And you can also check out all the other wonderful channels from the wider Bendverse at large, like Something to Talk About, Galaxy Geeks, Multiverse of Geekdom, Movie Legend Night, and Midnight Cinema, Time Reviews, and of course, In the Front Row, which is still not pictured in this thumbnail. So this has been me. This has also been Ryan. It has been us, and this has been the show that I'm desperately trying to find a way to finish properly. So thank you for watching if you have, and until the next show, everybody. In the words of Missy herself,
don't forget to like and subscribe.
Goodbye.